Right. Hello, welcome. I'm Dr. Claretha Yeager, and this is the Embrace Your Unique Self Summit show, where you learn to discover inner healing practices, reclaim self-worth, and trust your intuition, and love the skin that you're in. I would love to introduce you to today's expert, Valerie Gangas. Valerie has been called a force of nature with equal parts grounded, kick-ass provocateur, and all-embracing spiritual mystic. She is a life coach. She's a speaker on personal transformation and the author of an Amazon bestseller, Enlightenment Is Sexy, Every Woman's Guide to a Magical Life. So welcome, Valerie. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I would love to hear about the journey that you've been on. I know you've been through some challenging times, and there was something that happened with you that sort of like flipped the switch to put you on the path that you are on now. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Sure. So it really began in 2011. My mom had passed away, and she had been battling stage 4 breast cancer for 14 years. So I think during that whole time period, I was really filled with fear and anxiety. I wasn't sleeping. I was so scared that she was going to pass away. And when it actually happened, I completely fell apart. It was like all those years of carrying all that anxiety just made my nervous system and mind and body just explode. So I got really sick, and I was very suicidal. I was not working. I wasn't functioning. And through a series of events, I met a man, it was like a friend of a friend, and he suggested that I learn how to meditate just to get some rest because I was not sleeping at all. And no prescription drugs or anything that I would do would help me like get some rest. It wouldn't stop. So I thought, okay, you know what? I'll try it. I have nothing to lose. So I learned specifically transcendental meditation. I was living in Chicago at the time, and there was a TM center on Lakeshore Drive, and I didn't have a car because I was going to kill myself, so I didn't need a car. No job, nothing. My friend paid for me to take this course, and the first time I meditated, I had a radical shift in consciousness, and I didn't know at the time that's what was happening, but I dove so deep into my body. It was like I had gone to the bottom of the ocean. It just was so deep. I didn't even know that we could go that deep within. And when I came out of it, when I opened my eyes, it was a totally brand new world. I did not feel suicidal. I felt happier than I'd ever felt in my whole life. And this was in 20 minutes. So really, that's where the story begins.
Awesome. I was going to ask you how long it felt like you were sort of in that experience, because I know some people think that sometimes those types of awakenings can take a really long time, and other times it's just like that quick. So I think that's
it. I mean, there was no time in this space, but I had been studying spirituality since I was like 12 years old. I was a religious studies major. I had read tons of books and gotten all this information, but I never thought about like awakening and enlightenment. That just wasn't the path that I was on. I didn't even know that this was a thing, because it's totally different to read about it versus, actually experiencing it. I don't even know how to put it into words, what I experienced that day, but I do know that my life changed forever, and there was no going back. And since then, I've met tons of people that have had experiences like that. And it's exactly what you said. Some people, it's more gradual. Maybe they're longtime meditators, or they're just doing different spiritual practices, and it gradually builds in them. And some people like me, it just hits you like a hurricane. And there's pros and cons to both, but
right.
That was my experience.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, sometimes when you're on the longer route, you can integrate things a little bit. You've got the time to integrate versus if things just happen that quickly.
Yeah, because it's very confusing.
Yes.
Awesome. It's confusing. And no one ever talked to me about stuff like this. And there's no roadmap there was no roadmap that I was aware of. And I ended up going back to school and getting a master's degree in transpersonal psychology, which is spiritual psychology, to learn more about what I had experienced. Because there were so many ups and downs from that point on. And it's not like I could just find the answers, by like asking my neighbor or something. It was too abstract. It was not common.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's no Google answers.
There's no Google answers. Not really. No. So it was challenging. I had to go out there and gain as much knowledge as I possibly could to support what was happening internally.
Mm-hmm. And did it take you a while to find that community of people that you could relate to in this like new way that you were, this like new way of being that you had after that experience?
Well, I immediately, like within 2 weeks, I was working with my TM teacher and the David Lynch Foundation, which the David Lynch Foundation brings meditation to, veterans, people that can't afford TM. They'll bring it and to a ton of people. But what we were doing was we were bringing meditation into corporations. And Oprah Winfrey was one of the corporations that we went into. So I had a restaurant and bar background. Like that's all I had ever done. I had no public speaking experience. I wasn't out talking about higher states of consciousness. I was like, working in a restaurant. So within 2 weeks having this experience, and the first person that I was giving a speech to was Oprah. So it went from like 0 to 100. But it was like I downloaded so much like divine wisdom. I just knew it was, I didn't have to try. I was getting information and then it was coming out of my mouth.
Mm.
So I did have the TM community, my teacher that I worked with, and then I ended up moving to Fairfield, Iowa 2 years later to write my first book. And then I found an entire community of people that understood what was going on with me. And that was extremely helpful.
I bet. I can't even imagine how much it probably felt like a little bit of a homecoming to finally.
Absolutely. I felt like it was like a second miracle, because one of the reasons I was so sick after my mom died is because I felt like I was never going to find another person like my mom, a deeply spiritual person that could talk to me about what was important to me, which was God and these other types of experiences or ways of thinking. And so I thought when she was gone, that was it. Like she was the only person that understood. But I found this whole community and I really feel like they're my family.
That's wonderful. That's beautiful. What an arc, from from one end of the spectrum to the other. So
yeah, but then, I knew then for a fact, like once you fall into this grace, once you're in that flow, then everything starts coming to you. And it's a totally opposite way of living than I lived before.
Right.
I just was like, bring it on. It was no problem. Life came to me and I did not have to struggle anymore.
Yeah. And that's such a relief. I know a lot of people are looking for that. And speaking of like how you were just saying how you're living, I know you say a lot in like on your website and in your shares on social media and stuff. You say life is best lived from the inside out. Mm-hmm. And is that some of the magic that you share in your book, Enlightenment Is Sexy?
Absolutely, because I felt like no one ever taught me this. I mean, my mom did in a way without saying it specifically like that. She taught me to listen to my intuition and always look for the magic in the world. Because, she was a poet. She was very different. She was not like anyone else I knew. And she was my closest confidant. So she showed me by example how to live differently. And it really was this rich inner world that she had created inside of me that she also had. So I guess I was prepped for it, but when it actually happened to me, everything flipped. So I knew like I didn't have to struggle anymore and push. It was like I could just meditate, be quiet, let information come to me, slow my life down and have success and have happiness. And that felt so much better to me than like being stressed and running all the time. And it seemed ridiculous the way I was living before after I had this experience. So
I think
yeah, for me, it's, you got to go inside out. That's where the magic is for sure.
absolutely, absolutely. I like how you said you had to slow down. Like it was the opposite of how you were living before and how you had to slow down just in order to get still. And if you put the focus on just receiving the information, not necessarily having to like go get it, it would just come to you. And I think that's something that we struggle with, like in our culture, because it's just, you know, the go, 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 and you have to go get things and you have to push versus just being a little bit more receiving and a little bit softer in that way.
Right, because we're not taught to live that way. You know, we're taught like go out there and get it done, and be successful. And you can still be very successful, just more on your terms and more in the flow of nature instead of, you know, like spinning. And in fact, when I decided to write my book, I thought I'm really going to slow this down. And I quit my job, sold pretty much everything I owned in Chicago, and moved out to basically a farm in the middle of Iowa. And when I was in that much silence, when I was in a community that half the town meditates, like the silence was just, it was everywhere.
Wow.
And then I thought, oh my God, this is like another layer of magic that I had never experienced because I always lived in the city.
Yeah, yeah,
And
totally different.
that book wrote itself. You know, I just showed up and put my fingers on the keyboard, but it was really all that silence and magic that um, gave me all the information I needed. And I had never written anything before in my life. So I knew I was onto something because I felt so supported by the trees. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
it was a great experience.
yeah, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, you just don't even know the levels of support around you until you get quiet and you can feel it. So,
Absolutely.
awesome. I know in your work you talk about working with a lot of people who are highly sensitive. Can you kind of define for us, for the people that, for the audience that isn't familiar with that, what a highly sensitive person may appear as, and how being highly sensitive can actually be a blessing versus a burden? I know a lot of people feel that being highly sensitive in certain ways is kind of a curse.
Yeah, because I don't feel like this world is made for highly sensitive people, but I think that highly sensitive people are the most magical people because they see all the details. They're creative, but they also need some quiet time and alone time. And this like rushing around situation does not work for them. I mean, you're like stealing from yourself if you're a highly sensitive person and you live that way. But there's such a pull from society to, you know, live like everybody else. It can be a real challenge to break away from that and say, no, like I can't work a 9 to 5 and then have a big social life and then be on the board of this and that and run to the gym. I mean, that would not work for a highly sensitive person. And you wouldn't be able to tap into what the universe or God, whatever you want to call it, is giving you this information to go out and create things in the world and live on your own terms, because there's not a guidebook for highly sensitive people that we're raised with. Like no one tells you, hey, you might be kind of sensitive. Like, let's think about doing this a different way. You're just like in the flow, like with everybody else. And it doesn't do a body good if you're a highly sensitive person.
Right. Yeah. And can you talk about a little bit how people can use that information so it like serves them in a way that might, like some other people might feel like it makes life a little bit harder?
I think the first step is to just know what you are and accept it, and then start creating, boundaries for yourself. And always go back to, wait, I have to take care of myself first. Because if I don't take care of myself, I can't help other people. I can't accomplish my goals. It's just, you have to decide, do you want to struggle or do you want it to be soft and quiet and easier? And if that's what you want, if you want a good nervous system and you want to feel good all the time, then you have to make life choices. Elaine Aron, I would say she's the one that coined the term. and she has the highly sensitive person in love and the regular highly sensitive person. They are like the Bible for highly sensitive people. She has lots of tips and tricks, and she can help people understand what's really going on, because like I said, it can be very confusing. But you have to make a decision. Like, you have to be strong and say, this is not working for me. I'm going to live this way. When I moved to Iowa, everyone thought I was crazy. They were like, what are you doing? Like, you have a great job, this and that is happening. But I knew, and I came first. Like, I had to make a decision, and it was the best thing I could have ever done, because I listened to my intuition.
Yeah.
So
I love that you just said I came first. I think that
I had to.
Yeah.
I had to.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I feel like that should be just like a social media share by itself.
Yeah, and not that you're selfish or thinking about yourself, but you have to, especially if you're sensitive. Like, you're going to have to live differently, and you're going to have to find support from people that understand you. Because if you're talking to people that don't get it, you might as well just go bang your head up against a wall. They cannot see it. So you have to take control and make decisions that might look odd to other people, but really, like, who cares?
Right. Yeah. Do what you need to do for yourself.
You got to do what you need to do for yourself. That's it. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. So since we're talking about that and doing what you need to do for yourself, can you share like a practice or a tip that you use for yourself personally to enhance sort of like the self-fulfillment, self-love or self-empowerment with what you need to do for yourself in order to be who you are out in the world?
Well, for me, I definitely meditate every day. Like, that sets the stage. Like, when I meditate in the morning, I know like the rest of the day it's going to be smooth, because I've seen a difference when I've not meditated and meditated. So for me, that's like my base. I have to live an authentic life. And I feel like the more honest I am with myself, and the more the inside matches the outside, the more empowered I feel, the more grounded I feel. That's right up there at the top of the list. Just being true to yourself, however the chips may fall. I think that comes first, because if you are like living a lie, or you're not living, how you really want to be, and you're pretending, that chips away at your soul. And that is the opposite of empowerment.
Just curious how, because I know a lot of people meditate different ways, sitting, laying down, in their bed, they've got a sacred space. Just curious, like, how do you meditate?
I just sit in the chair, or like sit on the couch. I don't lay down, because I'll definitely pass out. But I've meditated like on trains, planes. I've meditated in the back of a cab in New York City. Like, nothing bothers me. So I can pretty much just, if you give me a chair, I can meditate.
Okay.
I keep it simple.
Yeah, I think that's the key. So I think meditation it's challenging for a lot of people, because they feel like they have to do it a certain way.
Yeah.
But really, it's just kind of like finding the way that works for you. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And like, I don't know if you've noticed, but I like to live my life like easy, like Sunday morning. So to me, TM was like so easy. I mean, my teacher taught me how to meditate, and like, I just knew. And since then, I've, been in contact with hundreds, or just a ton of people. And they always say, I can't meditate. And I'm like, you just wait. Yeah, you can. And they always can. I don't think, you definitely should not be stressed out over your meditation practice.
Right. Yes.
I think it should be easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
easy like Sunday morning.
Easy like Sunday morning.
My
Just
favorite
close
song.
your eyes and
don't overthink it.
Don't overthink it. And you're going to have thoughts, but that's just stress leaving your body. It doesn't really mean anything.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Well, you've got a new book coming out. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Sure. So I'm still working on it, and it's about radical transformation, different paths that you can take that can lead you to this type of experience, and then what happens after you have this experience. So since this happened to me in 2011, I got very curious. I wanted to meet other people that had had similar experiences so I could kind of make sense of what had happened. And in searching for these other people, I found all these other paths that they had been on that led them to this awakening experience. So I just started, writing it down like, oh, this person did this and this person did that. Because I never felt like it was just what happened to me, like that's the only way. I knew there was other paths to this. And I just broke it down into 14 different ways. And there was no other book like that out there. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. It's like choose your own adventure to awakening.
I love
So that's the next one I'm working on.
And does that correlate with anything else that you've got coming up in the future as far as services or?
I have an online course. It's called Stress Rehab. We've been talking about not being stressed out. I feel like, especially after you have a transformative experience like this, you have to kind of undo everything that you've learned and how you've been living. And that's a real challenge because you've probably had a ton of stress in your life. But now it's a new day. Now, how are you going to live? Mm-hmm. So I named it Stress Rehab because you almost need to go to rehab to relearn how to live your life and let go of the old way.
I think that's so important because, yeah, there's so many habits that we don't even know that we have that are feeding our actions and our thoughts and things like that. And so
it's like, oh, well, we've always done it this way. So that's what I just do. But it doesn't work that way after you've had this type of experience. Everything's different and you have to make sense of it. And you have to let go of, old friends, old jobs. Maybe you're going to move. Maybe you're going to get divorced. Like people do really crazy things because they have a new mind now. So it's a challenge. So I wanted to support people in that because that's what I needed when it happened to me.
Yeah. Paying it forward.
Paying it forward. Forever. That's the path I'm on now till the end of my days.
Right. Wow, that's just so wonderful. And I feel like you're just so expansive in like what you're doing in the world and your message. And I just love the journey and the path that you're on right now. So
thanks.
Yeah.
I love it too. I just made a decision like God was my boss now and I was just going to do this. And I've loved every second of it, really. Mm-hmm. It's been really fun and interesting and I've met a lot of cool people and the subject matter never gets old to me. So, this is it.
Mm-hmm. This is it. Well, thank you so much. Before we wrap up with you, Valerie, I just wanted to share a little bit about your free gift that you have for the audience. It is a free book called 7 Signs of Transformation, which is kind of what we've been talking about the whole time today. Do you want to say a little bit about your book?
Sure. Like I said before, you are going to be looking at some changes in your life and signs and clues of like what's really going on because you're going to feel very different. So I just wanted to throw like 7 signs out there that if you are experiencing these things, you are probably on a new path. You've probably had an awakening experience. And not to be confused, there's a lot of us out there that have had this. And it was just kind of like a book of clues, I guess, for the reader.
I like that. I like all these little sort of like breadcrumbs that you're leaving, like you said, you're like your other book is like a choose your own adventure type of story.
Well, it's only because I was searching for it. And like Enlightenment Is Sexy, I wrote that book because there wasn't another book like that out there. Mm-hmm. And so I guess I go searching for information, and once I get it, then I want to show others what I found.
And I think that's you're just serving your purpose and part of you being this expanded consciousness on the planet right now. So thank you for sharing all of your knowledge with us.
Thanks.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing your story too. I know that it probably resonates with a few people that will be watching this, and we really appreciate it. So thank you to the audience. We appreciate you being here. Please hit reply to this email and tell me what you found most useful about our interview today with Valerie. And don't forget to grab her free gift. It's in your email. And stay tuned for more interviews for our summit, Embrace Your Unique Self. So see you soon, you guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.